whenever you want to find the remainder and they give you something to divide by, right? The thing that you are dividing by, the proper procedure is to put what you are dividing by. In this case here, it's x plus 1. And you're supposed to put it equal to 0 and solve for x. Right? Now, I know some of you all could solve for x in your head, and you might just skip this part, but I think you should put it down for the examiner. Right? So if we solve for x here, so therefore, if we solve for x, we're going to get minus 1. So to find the remainder now, right, you're going to go to the function that they give you, and you're going to replace all the x's that you see here with minus 1. Now be real careful, right? When you're throwing away the x and replacing it with the value, please put it in brackets. All right, so let's just replace it here. So we have 2, and this cube only belongs to the x, so it's minus 1 cubed plus p minus 1 squared plus 2 minus 1 plus 5. Minus 1 cubed is minus 1, and then you multiply it by the 2. So you end up with minus 1 by 2, which is minus 2. Minus 1 squared is positive 1. Positive 1 multiplied by p is just p. Well, this is easy. 2 by minus 1 is minus 2 plus 5. So that, let's just simplify this as much as possible. Minus 2 is minus 4 plus 5. That's 1. So you end up with 1 plus p. So the remainder, I'll put REM. I can't make the word fit in between there. The remainder, we don't get an actual number. We get an expression. How much of you all can confirm that? I see about 3 people confirm that. But I need for the rest of the class, so at least let me know. Hey, if you get wrong, it's not a problem. But if you understood where it went wrong and whatnot, please let me know. Please. All right, so now they're saying that you're dividing by x minus 2 instead. So therefore, we're going to put the x minus 2 equal to 0 and solve for x. So when you solve for x here, you're going to get, let me see if I can squeeze it in here. You'll get x is equal to positive 2. I think that's the easiest part there. What we're going to do now is substitute it inside here again. So we're going to replace all the x's with positive 2. So that means you have 2 cubed plus p squared. And we try to simplify this, right? And obviously when we simplify it, we'll get an expression for the new remainder. Because all we're doing, whenever we replace the x with the value using this procedure, it allows us to get an expression or the value for the remainder. So 2 to the power 3 is 8. Remember, you have to work out the brackets first. 2 to the power 3 is 8. 8 by 2 is 16. 2 squared is 4. 4 by p is 4p. 2 by 2 is 4 plus 5. So let's work this out, right? 16 plus 4 is 20 plus 5 is 25. So the 25 plus 4p is the remainder if you divide by x minus 2. Now, they said, according to the question, when you divide it by x minus 2, you just so happen to get the same remainder as in the first part of the question. Remember, in the first part of the question, the remainder was 1 plus p. So all I'm trying to tell you is this remainder, this expression, apparently is equal to this expression. In both cases, you get the same exact remainder. All you have to do now is solve for p, right? And solving for p is going to be super easy. I'll throw the p's on this side and all the other numbers on that side. So you basically, you have 4, well, that's not one. Get the eraser here. All right. So we have 4p here, and then you have minus p because you throw across the part. So 1 minus 25, right? But it's super easy, right? Throw across the multiply. So p is minus 8, right? And a few people sent that before I worked it out. First thing we need to do is go to the quadratic they give us. Remember, it's x squared. Remember, the number touching x squared here is really 1. So that means a is 1. Whoever is touching x is b. So that means b is r plus 4. That whole expression together is b. And everything else without the x is what? C. So all we're going to do is go over here now and replace the a, the b, and the c. So b here is r plus 4. Don't forget to square it. Minus 4. A is how much? 1. And c is 4r. So at least simplify this expression for me now. Remember, r plus 4 squared does not mean you square everybody in the brackets. What does that mean? It means it's r plus 4 by an x r plus 4. So don't fall for that trick in the exam, right? I'll do this easy piece here. 4 by 1 is 4. 4 by 4 is 16. So that's 16r. I just need you to simplify this part for me. All right, now the brackets here, I'm not going to go through this in detail, right? Being an advanced class, right? So when you simplify the brackets, you'll get r squared. You'll get 4r and the next 4r, that is 8r plus 16, and you have this minus 16r here weighted. So when you simplify this, you'll get r squared, 8r minus 16r, that is these two guys here, that's minus 8r and then plus 16. And it's still more than 0. So here's what. You start off with a quadratic, and then when you throw it in this formula, you get a next quadratic. It's almost like a quadratic living inside a next quadratic. You can think of it like that. Do me a favor, just solve this quadratic. Do it with the letter R. So A is 1, B is minus 8, and C is 16. So solve this, but instead of the letter X, it have the letter R in it. So solve that quadratic and let me know what you get, right? Remember, A is 1. R squared is the same thing as 1R squared. Okay. And to solve that quadratic, you're going to use the regular boring formula, minus B plus some. You all know this formula by now, right? All right, so we have A, B, and C. I was hoping to get 2 answers, but sometimes you only get 1 answer. No? It just so happened when you use this formula to solve it, we get the 2 answers, we get these 2 same answers, 4 and 4, which really means it has 1 answer. So that means R is equal to 4. That's the answer. R is equal to 4. All right, so if you didn't get 4, just try it back again. You may have just typed in a number wrong here, right? Just to confirm, remember when you're solving a quadratic, we're supposed to work out this piece first. You all could confirm what value you got there. For the b squared minus 4ac, a few people getting it wrong. So I just want to put them on the right track. I get in 0 over here when I work it out, right? So if you didn't get 0 here, remember, when you get 0 here, the square root of 0 would be 0. All right? So I'll let you know that the final answer is 4. For the people who did not get 4, please confirm with me when you finally get the 4. And then we will move on to the next question. All right. So let's draw this scenario out, right? If we were to draw this out, let's draw X and a Y axis. Now, in this case here, right, we don't have X. Instead of X, we have R, okay? So if we were to draw this quadratic, would we get a U-shaped curve or an N-shaped curve? Well, what do you all think? You will get a U-shaped curve, all right? Because A is positive 1. Remember, when A is positive, you just always get a U-shaped curve. Now, usually, right, a quadratic just cut the x-axis at how many places? At 2 places. But today, because when we solve for R, we got only one answer. So that means that this quadratic is a U-shaped graph, right? And it only what? Slices the x-axis at 1 point, okay? So it's actually going to look like this. It's a U-shaped graph, and it just touches the x-axis at how much? 4. All right, everyone's seeing that, right? Because it's not cutting at 2 places, it only cutting at 1, and that one cut is just it just slightly touches the x-axis and then goes back upwards. Everybody with me so far? Right. Now they want to know which part of the graph is more than 0. So this answer I gave here is wrong, right? You'll see why it's wrong just now. They want to know which part of the graph is more than 0. Now at exactly 4, it's touching the x-axis. More than 0 means it's above the x-axis. And well, if it was less than 0, if that means they're asking about which part of the graph is below the x-axis. But no part of this graph is below the x-axis. So tell me something. At this dot over here, is the graph above the x-axis? It's a yes or no question. At exactly 4, is it above the x-axis? The answer is no. Remember, above means above the x-axis, right? This is on the x-axis. Being on the x-axis and being above the x-axis is two completely different things. So which part of the graph is above the x-axis? And if we go this way, like let me say we now leave the 4 and we continue here. This green part is above the x-axis. So apparently when R is more than 4, the graph continues above the x-axis. But also just before the 4, isn't this blue part above the x-axis, not the x-axis, the r-axis, right? Isn't this part above the r-axis? But how do we define this? This is when R is less than 4. When we leave 4 and we go backwards, it's above the x-axis. So the range, remember they ask us for the range of values of R. So this is actually wrong. The final answer is when R is more than 4 and when R is less than 4. In those two scenarios, the graph is above the x-axis. And don't ever mix up above with being on the x-axis. All right? So that's the final answer. Let me know when you finish taking everything. And I'm working on the whole thing, and this we're using a shortcut formula. We have A, B, and C here. So just to throw it in, B is -7, 2, and A is how much? -2. We'll simplify that just now. Here we have 4 -2, C is how much? -6 minus B squared. And this whole thing is divided by for A. How much is A? All right, so see answers pop up. Real people sending an answer, so probably now is a good time to work it out. So -7 divided by -4, right? We'll get 7 over 4, right? Positive 7 over 4. You could leave it as a fraction or 1.75. That's when it work out this. For the red one, all right. I am getting 1/8 here, positive 1/8. So you can put 1/8 or 0.125. Do not round off, right? When you're expressing something in vertex form, I strictly advise that you do not round off. If you get a reoccurring number, then put the fraction. Do not round off that reoccurring number. All right, and we know A is how much here? -2. So my final answer for this will look something like this. Let's see. I would put -2, open brackets, x plus 1.75. It's up to you whether to put the fraction here or not, plus 0.125. All right, so let me know when you finally got it, right? And of course, feel free to move on to the next part. All right, so for the next part of the question, for part 2, they ask you to state the maximum value. Now, whenever they ask you, but when you have something where you call this vertex form, right? For part 2, well, in case you all didn't know, right? You all notice A is a negative value. So that means if you were to draw this quadratic, you will get what? An N shape. Now, an N shape here, or the rainbow one, is called a maximum curve, right? And all maximum curves will have a maximum point. It will have an X coordinate and a Y coordinate. The X coordinate is the opposite of the number in the brackets. So if we have positive 1.75, then it's negative 1.75. And the Y value is the value outside the brackets that's separated from everybody. But you don't make him the opposite. You just take this value as it is. So if it's positive 1.25, well, guess what? The Y value is positive 1.25. But whenever they phrase the question like this, what is the maximum value? They didn't ask you for the maximum coordinates. Whenever they state it like that, the answer they want is only the Y coordinate. So it's 0.125. Do not put down both for them and let the examiner choose which one he wants. That is not acceptable in the exam. You have to state only one of the answer, the Y coordinate. And you notice part 3, sorry, comes and asks you what is the X coordinate now. So the X coordinate is this value here. So the X coordinate is 1.75. Okay, so that's the final answer there. A lot of people send the correct thing. So everyone gets started with question 2, logs. Yes, sir. All right, so logs. So what my first step in this question, I noticed that you have two same values over here. Recall, right, that log A and A, well, once these two values are the same, it's always equal to 1. So I know I could throw this away and replace it with the number 1. So this is what I'll end up with. Log 2, well, what we could do, you notice that there's a minus sign here, and both of them have the same basis. So same base means we can divide both items. So we're going to end up with 6 plus the square root of 12 divided by 3, the square root of A, and this whole thing is equal to 1. Am I on the right track so far? For the people who got 3, Is this the answer? Is this the process you did so far? Great, so everyone is saying yes, right? So all we have to do now is convert it back to normal form. So we have to say 2 to the power 1 is equal to this gigantic thing here. So 2 to the power 1 is 2, right? I'm not going to write the power 1 because we know it's that. And it's equal to 6 plus the square root of 12 divided by 3 plus the square root of a. So to solve for a, we have to cross multiply. For those who didn't make it up, who didn't make it up to there, you think you could cross multiply and try to solve for a now, right? And send the answer. And let's see what if the answer is really true. All right, so let's start the cross multiplication process here and see what happens. Scrolling down. So let's cross multiply this one. It doesn't matter which diagonal. So both of them get multiplied by 3. So let's put the full work in. For some reason I can't see this answer. I know why I'm getting so much problems right now to even get it out. So square root of a is equal to 6 plus the square root of 12, because anything multiplied by 1 is itself. So both items get multiplied by 2. So again, 6 plus 2 the square root of a is equal to 6 plus the square root of 12. We're trying to solve with this. Throw across positive 6, you'll get minus 6. So this minus 6, this 6 and minus 6 will cancel out. So you end up with 2 square root of a is equal to the square root of 12. What we're going to do here now, the 2 is a multiply. Throw across a multiply. You're going to get what? A divide. Now this whole thing will get divided by 2. Right? Now it have more than one ways to go from this point, right? You could square both sides if you wish. So let's do it like that. I see someone is suggesting that. To get rid of the square root over the a, we could just square both sides. So let's do it like that. Now, if I'm squaring this side, I put the whole thing in brackets and square it, and then I have to square this side. So the 2 gets squared, and well, when a square root and a square, when a square root meets a squared, they cancel out each other. So 2 squared is 4, and the square root of a squared is just a. And well, the square root and the squared will cancel out here to give you 12. Yes, you guys were correct. You divide by 4 now. A is 3. Whenever you see inequalities, right? Let's do a real simple example. Let me say we have x on something. Let me just say 4, and it's more than 3. Remember, whatever you do to one side of an equation, you can do to the other side. Usually in a question like this, with an inequality, you notice there's a more than sign there. The first thing that might jump in someone's head is that 3 is the same thing as 3 on 1, and then you cross multiply. Never, ever, ever cross multiply when there is an inequality. That is a mistake, okay? Here's another mistake now, right? Remember inequalities, when you multiply by a negative, you just have to switch around the sign. I think you'll remember doing that somewhere in Form 3. So check this out. If I have x on 4 is more than 3, well, whatever you do to one side of an equal sign, you can do to the other side. And we have a little problem here. We have what? A denominator. Nobody likes a denominator, and we can't even cross multiply. So the next obvious thing to do is to multiply this side by 4. But if I multiply this side by 4, then I have to multiply the other side by 4 to keep the balance on both sides. If we do that, well, lucky for us, the 4 and the 4 will cancel out, and 3 by 4 is 12. Do we need to switch around this inequality? Do we have to switch around the more than to a less than? But what do you all think for this particular question? Right? One person said no. Right? Khalil says no. Amaya says no. The answer is no, because you're only supposed to switch around the inequality when you multiply by a negative number. We multiply both sides by +4, right? So we don't have to switch it around. So let me present another scenario now. Let's say instead of having a 4 underneath here, let's change around that question to something else a little bit different. If we have x on y is more than 5, and for some reason you don't like the letter y, remember y is a variable, just like how x is a variable. To get rid, and we're not allowed to cross multiply inequality, so we can't do that. So the next obvious thing to do now is to multiply both sides by y. That seems like our only resort. So if I do that now, the y and the y will cancel out, giving you x, and then you have 5y. Do I have to switch around the inequality? Yes or no? What do you all think? Because I multiply both sides by y. I hear no and I hear yes. The answer is no one knows. You don't know. You know how you don't know whether to switch it around? Remember, y is a variable, which means we don't know the value of y. Y is just representing a number that we don't know as yet. So who's to say y isn't a negative number? For all you know, y represents -2. But of course, y could represent what? +2. So we have to be very careful. So you know what we have to do in a case like this? Let me show you the correct thing to do in a case like this, right? Since we don't know y, well, whether y is a positive number or a negative number, we should multiply both sides. Instead of multiplying both sides by y, take the denominator, which is y, and multiply both sides by y squared. Because, first of all, we keep in the balance. Whatever we do to one side, we're doing it to the other side. So we're doing the correct thing in maths. But when we square something, won't we always get a positive number? So that way we safeguarding ourselves. So that way, if we multiply both sides by squared, since something squared will always be positive, the sign will never have to change. And we will never be left in that predicament where we don't know what to do with the inequality. And that is what we have to do with this question here. You notice the denominator is x minus 1. We don't know the value of x. So we don't know if x minus 1 is going to turn out to be a negative number or a positive number. So what we have to do to safeguard ourselves in this question, right? I'm going to write it a little bit bigger here. We have to multiply both sides by x minus 1 squared to be super safe. All right? So that's your starting of this question. Okay? So I hope that explains, well, I hope that clears up the issue or the trick in this question, right? In case you didn't see this, right? You have an x minus 1 here and x minus 1 squared. This will cancel out with the square at least. So you end up with x plus 3 and x minus 1 is more than 2. When you work out this piece here, remember this is x minus 1 by a next x minus 1. You're going to get x squared minus 2x plus 1. When I work out this part here, I get an x squared plus 3x minus x. So again, positive 2x minus 3. And here's 2x squared I guess we could throw everybody on the same side, right? I like everything to be on the left-hand side, right? You'll get the same answer if you throw it across on the other side, right? Let's see what we'll get here when we simplify it. You'll get minus 1x squared plus 6x minus 5 is more than 0. You all could agree with that? That's when you throw everybody on the same side and you simplify all the x squares without x and whatnot. So you end up with a quadratic here with an A, a B, and a C. And we know this is going to be what? A rainbow shape one. This is going to be a maximum because A is a negative. So solve the quadratic and sketch it there for me. When you solve the quadratic, we get in 1 and 5, right? So, and when you're getting 1 and 5, they're asking you now, which part of the curve is above the x-axis, more than 0? So the part that's above the x-axis, so let's put another squiggly line here, is this region here. That's the part between 1 and 5. So when x is between 1 and 5, that section of the curve is above the x-axis. So the thing in green, what I wrote in green, is the final answer for the examiner. So apparently you have an AP and you have the second term, 8th term, and the 44th term. So for the AP, the expression for T2 would be what? A plus n minus 1 by d. Now they said that the first term in the AP is 1. So that means we could replace the A with 1. So it will be 1 plus open brackets n minus 1. We're pretending n is 2 because they're talking about the second term. So 2 minus 1. And of course, we don't know the common difference. That is what they're asking us to find. So if we try to simplify this, 1 plus, and then, well, 2 minus 1 is 1. So it's 1d. We're going to end up with 1 plus 1 by d is d. So the expression for the second term is 1 plus d. You think you could do something similar for me for T8 because they're asking for T8, and you could do something similar for T44 for me? Get an expression for T8 and T44 for me. We will see how we can move forward from there. For T8, I have it laid out properly. So I think I'm going to get what? 1 plus 8 minus 1 is 7. Well, obviously, this is 1 plus 7d. I think, right? So somebody had it wrong here. For those who got it wrong, you understand how you got it wrong? I'm getting 7d here. Some people put minus 6d. Right? For those who got it wrong, just confirm with me now, right? And for T44, it's 1 plus, we're pretending n is how much? 44. 44 minus 1, and we don't know d. So over here, we're going to get 1 plus 44 minus 1 is 43d. All right, so everyone good so far? So we have an expression for T2, we have an expression for T8, and we have an expression for T44, right? Let's pause it there, make sure everyone gets on board. Now they're saying they have a GP. So you all know a GP has a T1, a T2, and what? A T3. We're talking about a GP here. So what they're saying is that these three things form the first three terms of a GP. So in the GP, they're trying to say 1 plus d is T1. In the GP, T2 is 1 plus 7d. And the third term is 1 plus 43d. That is what they are saying. But what do we know about a GP? Remember, for it to be a GP, if you take T2 and divide it by the term before, you will get the same exact answer as if you take T3 and divide it by the term after. Whenever you take the term in front and divide it by the term before, you just get something called the common ratio. So they're kind of building you up here to form an equation. So T2 is how much? 1 plus 7d. T1 is 1 plus d. T3 is 1 plus 43d. And T2 is 1 plus 7d. You just have to cross multiply. And when you cross multiply, you'll get a quadratic. Solve the quadratic. Then that is all it was. Right, so I didn't see it while I was reading the question. It's only while I was doing the question, then I figured out what was going on. All right, so I kind of fast track everything here. I did it quickly, right? So when we simplify it now, we get in this expression. Like I just said, we don't need to go to the quadratic formula. We could just factorize. We could probably just pull out minus 6d. If we pull out minus 6d, we will get d minus 5 is equal to 0. Right? You don't have to pull out the minus 60. You could have pulled out positive 60. Right? Now they said in this one here, they said we're supposed to get a positive number. So in a case like this, what we would normally do, we will put minus 6d equal to 0, and then we'll put d minus 5 equal to 0. And in both cases, solve for d. But in the first case, we get in 0, and in the second case, we get in positive 5. We have to choose the positive answer because that is what the examiner told us to choose. Right, so the final answer is d is equal to positive 5. Whenever they give you the equation of a circle, right, it's supposed to have x squared here and y squared here, not 2x squared and 2y squared. If you look at the general equation of a circle, it's x squared plus y squared plus, let's have a f here, x plus what? hy plus c or something like that, right? But the point is, when you go to your textbook, here it is be squeaky clean and here it is be squeaky clean. That is not the case in today's question. So you know what you're going to have to do with this question before you start? You're going to have to divide throughout by 2 first, okay? So, and if you divide, remember, whatever you do to one side of an equation, you have to do it to the other side. So if you divide everyone on this side by 2, well, lucky for you, the other side is 0. If we do that, we're going to get x squared plus y squared minus 6x minus 4y plus 4 is equal to 0. Then you start the question. This is the official starting point of the question. Okay? You can only use the formulas in the textbook if over here is squeaky clean and if over here is squeaky clean. Right, so start off with part 1 there, find the center and radius of the circle. Right, so to get the center, the formulas are on the screen there, right? What you have to do to get the x coordinate of the center is take the value touching the x and you always divide it by -2. And to get the y coordinate of the center, you take whatever is touching y and divide it by -2. Let me just complete it here. So this is -6 divided by -2 and -4 divided by -2. We are obviously going to get 3 and 2. So the center of the circle is +3 and +2. To get the radius is x, well, whatever is touching x divided by +2 squared plus whatever is touching y divided by positive 2 squared minus, well, let's call this the c value here, minus c. Now, in today's question, c is positive, right? But sometimes the value of c is be negative. So according to the formula, sometimes two minus signs could touch to give you a positive. So let's be real careful about that, right? So a lot of people are saying that the radius is 3. I haven't worked it out as yet. Let me see. Minus 6 divided by 2 squared plus minus 4 divided by 2 squared minus how much? 4. What? A lot of space. Not a lot of space on the screen here to work. Minus 6 divided by 2 is minus 3. Minus 3 squared is positive 9 plus minus 4 divided by 2 is minus 2. Minus 2 squared is positive 4 minus. Yep, the answer is 3. So the radius is 3. Right, just confirm it when you get it on your end. And of course, it's just part 2 to do now. And once we finish that, class is finished. The gradient of the yellow line, right? That's the original line here. So much. It's y2 minus y1, right? So you have x1, you have y1, you have x2 and y2. So it's y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So you get in 0 divided by 3, which is what? 0. So the gradient is 0. What do you all know, right, about if a line has a gradient of 0, that means it's a perfectly what? Flat line. Remember, the red line is at right angle. So think about this. If you have a line that's perfectly flat, right? And a perpendicular line will be what? Obviously, perfectly vertical. Does that make sense? Because remember, the yellow line and the tangent, the radius and the tangent are supposed to form 90 degrees. So that means the red line is going to be perfectly what? Vertical. The gradient of a perfectly vertical line is infinity, but that's irrelevant right now. But I just want to make sure everyone understands that this diagram here was obviously not drawn to scale, but our calculation showed that the gradient of the yellow line was 0, which really means the yellow line is perfectly horizontal, perfectly flat, making the red line perfectly vertical. Let me know if you understand up to there. All right. Let me show you something now. So let's draw X and a Y axis. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The rest of this question is normal maths now. So that means, remember, the vertical line, the red line is going through the point 6, 2, right? So let me just plot that on a graph, right? 6, 2 is where on a graph? 6 on the X and 2 is on the Y. And they said the red line, which is perfectly vertical, is going through that line, that point. What do you all call, well, obviously if this point is 6, 2, that means if we continue the line, it will go through 6 on the x-axis. From normal boring maths, what do you call a perfectly vertical line that goes through 6 on the x-axis? Well, what's the equation of that line? It's a special line you're supposed to learn of. A perfectly vertical line going through X. The answer is X is equal to 2. That's the equation of this line. A perfect, not X equal to 2, sorry, X equal to 6. So the equation of a perfectly vertical line going through 6 on the x-axis is x is equal to 6. It has no y in this. This is the equation of the line. Right? And of course, well, guys, you have to communicate with me if you all remember that or whatnot from math class, from normal math class.